1. Well, welcome to very different...
I refuse to talk for the rest of this podcast.
Great.
What
okay.
now, Hody?
You I gotta
fell
carry the...
right for my trap.
I gotta carry the whole podcast by myself. What a terrible thing to do for a podcast host. Is just...
Oh, you don't know the power I hold.
Yeah. We're at a beach, so we got someone playing...
Oh, we got reggaeton playing. We're at Rockaway Beach right now.
Yeah, but
plenty of birds.
Hopefully you guys dig it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you guys aren't here. You're losers listening at home. Yeah. Like, we're probably at work doing side shit.
Well, cause
we're living it up.
Yeah.
We're like so much cooler than you listening right now.
It was because it was hot earlier. We were walking around. We had to take an Uber, literally, because it was too hot.
Right. Because we're too hot. But now it's got a breeze coming in, the sun's down, so this is probably the best place to do this podcast. I don't know how to segue into the topic.
I do, because, what are we here to talk about?
Alright, we're here to talk about...
what show is this? We're here to talk about Babylon. What show is this?
This is...
We have a title now.
Yeah, this is The Search for the Goat, Sheikh and Hody's Tight Little Rabbit Holes, right?
You call it Into the Rabbit Hole. That's the YouTube title, but we could change that.
I
like that more.
I always say, like, the more disgusting version.
Tight rabbit. Say it again?
Sheikh and Hody's Tight Little Rabbit Hole.
There we go.
Okay.
Yummy. Well, here's the thing, because we actually talked about this a few months ago, because it's been a while.
Right.
At first, this was more of a podcast about just fiction stuff. And then it kind of broadened, and this is actually something that goes back quite a while, because you said in December 2018, you're like, we should have a podcast about conspiracy. I just want to do it yourself, where it's like, we should have a podcast with conspiracy theories. Yeah. And it's like, okay.
Like, you remember, like, the month and everything?
Yeah, dude.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we're at, I remember we were at a ice cream joint, and
What ice cream was I eating?
I don't remember what ice cream you were eating, but what ice cream do you usually get?
Probably like chocolate fudge with vanilla.
You're probably eating that. We were with Sharon. We saw Spider-Verse that day.
I don't remember shit, bro. I smoke a lot of weed. My memory doesn't exist anymore.
I'm sure that's where you get this interest in going down these fucking rabbit holes, where it's the JFK assassination, which I was big into. We're gonna get to the Babylonian stuff in a second, but because I was.
Babylon ties into the JFK assassination.
Absolutely.
I'll tie it all in the end. You won't even see it.
You won't even see it coming. King Hammurabi was the man behind.
He is Marilyn Monroe, dude.
Yes.
Guys.
That's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to break it. Well, I was in the cats because they would show stuff on the History Channel of all places.
Would they?
Talk
about Babylon?
They would talk about that would be they would talk about the JFK assassination.
Antichrist coming in.
Yes, it was I was right on the edge growing up watching that stuff. They were right on the edge of turning into like the conspiracy theory channel.
All right. Well, I mean, let's break it down for the non-nerds of this. Like listening,
Babylon?
Two people listening. So Babylon was part of ancient Mesopotamia.
Yes.
Right. It was during that time, pretty much like civilizations were first starting out. Cities were like becoming a thing for the first time. Instead of like tribal gods, now it's like this. It turned into villages, it turned into cities, and now these cities are like conquering other cities, gaining land, gaining new gods from this, so on and so forth. So this was like the time period. I'm just trying to like put a setting.
Well, but why is it compelling to you before we dive in? Like why?
Why is it compelling? Let's see.
Like, because just be brief for now. We'll talk about more the why later. But just why?
I'm sure like. We've all heard like the name and shit before in like history class.
Oh yeah,
Hammurabi. In what, like 7th, 8th,
that's 6th and 7th, and then probably 9th.
And I think most of our like history lessons started with like the Hammurabi Code.
Yes.
Right? Like for the most part, they'll talk about how did they start off? It was Mesopotamia, right? Then they would jump on to Egypt.
Then go to Rome.
They would go to Greek and Rome.
I didn't learn about Persia.
They won't teach about Persia, where the brown people are.
Don't
So
teach about
then-
Muhammad.
They teach about Muhammad only when like they're talking about like crusades and
then
shit.
they got a picture of the Twin Towers.
Right,
You never
yeah.
forget.
And whatever, we're off course. But yeah, it would be Greeks in Rome and then straight to America
Right.
shit or Britain shit.
Well, so this is. But why is it interesting
So
now?
like
at 24?
Mesopotamia, Babylon.
Right. Okay.
You would hear about like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You would
Right.
hear about Hammurabi's Code. All this stuff is like, it's almost like a legend for us. You know what I mean? Like what we know, even like the facts of the actual history, it's like doesn't feel that far off than learning about Hercules and shit. You know what I'm talking about?
Which is fiction.
Fiction.
And that's why the thing I was going to tie together was we were talking about fiction, and it's
Right.
like.
Well, this
And
is like the Bronze Age, right? This Bronze Age.
It's so
period.
long ago. It's more than the Bronze
Yeah.
Age. This is
like writing started, like
well, that's
from
Sumer.
these cities.
Yeah, 3000, and then she gets Sargon of Akkad, who we'll talk about in a few minutes.
right.
But it reads like, because I got into this. There's a comment because again, this is the first history one we're gonna do, and we might. I don't know where we'll go from here, but we might be doing more history ones. Because for me,
is more my thing.
it reads more. Reading this stuff reads like I'm reading the Halo lore from because that's what I did in like the Fallout lore and all that kind.
And
You're reading an
that's the thing.
RPG thing.
All we know about their history is the perspective of them from other histories, right? So what we know about Babylon, we know from the perspective of the Hebrews that fought against them, or the Persians that fought against them, or the Syrians that fought. They had a lot of enemies, but everyone fought each other.
Talk
at that
about
time.
yeah. It's a very warlike. They were all very warlike cultures.
And when we get our perception of them through the lenses of their enemies, then it doesn't only paint them as like mysterious to us now and like, oh, I want to find out what they're really about, but it also like paints this like picture that like we never got to like really appreciate them the way we did, like, let's say Egyptians, or let's say the Romans and the Greeks, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? We just like, oh yeah, they did these very huge monumental things that are super important, but that's it. We'll just know about Hammurabi. That's it. And then like we'll talk about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for like one sentence, and that's it.
Yeah. So there you fucking go. We're just basically
Yeah, you fucking piece of
fucking
shit. Learn
piece of
about
shit,
Babylon.
man.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
It's not that different from reading about like Lord of the Rings for me, and reading about Sauron is no different for me or Morgoth than reading about fucking Hammurabi or Sargon of Akkad. So to me, it's all great. It's a great source for fiction. That's how I found it, because Ryan Johnson of Star Wars, he said he started listening to a history podcast about Rome for Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And that started a whole...
And the thing
whole
is,
fun,
like,
yeah.
Rome, again, we might do a whole another episode about Rome. I'm sure we will.
It's the best story.
But it gets all the spotlight. It seems
It does
like
get all the
ancient
spotlight.
history for most people start with Rome for some reason, where it's just like
Egypt, a little in Greece.
Egypt, yeah,
those
sure.
three.
But like even then, it's not like, it's more, one is like a legend thing, because we don't know about things the further we go deeper into history, right? But
Well, as you're going to find out, because there's a lot of stuff we don't know about Babylon.
yeah, but there is a lot of stuff we do know now as well.
Right. Well, so on that note, what is Babylon? What is it?
Alright, so Babylon,
How does
I
it begin?
guess
What's
it
the
would
very
be
beginning?
in present day Iraq and Syria, right? So think about that region. I think back in this time period, it was a lot greener than it is right now. I remember learning about this like whole thing about how the Sahara kept like spreading further and further.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it was before this time period or if it was at this time, but there was a lot of settlement in this region.
What
in
time
Iraq
periods
and
do we got
Syria.
it? We are on the Wikipedia page for fucking...
Right.
the-
I mean, like it was established 1895 BC, but the thing is, like, what does that mean?
Well,
like,
who
how
was
can
before?
you say?
Right.
cities aren't established like the
Right.
way it is now, right? Like, because it was like a village before it was Babylon the
Of
city.
what
And it
country?
was, I mean, like, there was no countries back in those times.
Well,
like,
that
that's
kind
the
of
thing.
what
Like, how
yeah.
like human settlement evolved. It was like, it went from these hunter-gatherers to like these like settlement villages that can like kind of farm shit along the Nile or along the Tigris and the Euphrates. And then from there you started to see like city-states, right, being born. And like once these city-states started conquering other city-states and started getting land that way, that's when you start seeing like, okay, you could say this is a country now, the way we see a country. You know what I mean?
Well, I was reading about nationalism being, and it is true. That's also a 19th century thing, which is very bizarre because it used to be like king. We talked about once with Game of Thrones. It used to be about that show's about kings and queens and lords.
Yeah, I mean the Seven Kingdoms. It was the Seven Kingdoms before it was conquered by Aegon and became
like you
one
wouldn't.
big kingdom.
The point being, you wouldn't be a proud. Well, what? I guess it is our theory. The hypothesis we're working with is you wouldn't be a proud Babylonian. I'm from Babylonia.
No, I would say you would be proud of your city, and that's it. You wouldn't be proud of like, oh, I'm like Persian or I'm like I'm like this race or whatever. It would be like very location based.
Even
like,
Greece is like that. You're not a proud Greek. I'm a proud Spartan. I'm a proud.
Think about
Athenian.
like Singapore today. Like that's a city state.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's how it was back then. It would be like New Yorkers.
Well, ironically,
you know what I mean?
this is a bit of a side tangent, but that is something I think New Yorkers struggle with patriotism because we don't really feel.
No,
I don't feel like an American. I feel like a New Yorker.
I will rep New York.
I'll rep New York
100% before I'll rep America.
I'm not gonna wear. You'll never see, but it's because we grew up in the city.
It's exactly.
That's kind of.
There's something to it, and it's like very like more communal. Even though like it is like spreading away from like the communal likeness, like city states are still limited by transportation. How far can you go? You know, like the walls were very important. So like your cities needed to have walls, right? That was the only like way to protect it. So like you couldn't just like, oh yeah, I guess we should like expand our city now, because now you have to build like a whole like either a ring around it, you know, to like add to the new land, or like find a better way to defend it.
I just had a crazy. Here's why I don't do marijuana. I don't do. Imagine how trippy it would be to literally meet a real Babylonian. Like a real, like show up at the gates and they're speaking this dead language.
Well, like if we can talk to them, like I wonder how much we'd be similar and how much would be different.
Right.
Because I see a lot of things that are like, oh shit, okay, I see this happening even today.
Right.
And then there's a lot of things where like, oh, like the rules of the world were different.
We're
for you
so
guys.
different. It's like, holy shit, you're not even like a person.
Right.
You're
So I love bringing this up, and I'm sure we talked about this concept like before. How each city-state kind of had their own god, right?
Yes.
Their own god, their own like this is the supreme dude for our town. He could be like, you know, the god of the storms or the god of the sun, whatever. And what would happen is when they went and fought another city, and then they see like their god, like literally in the center of their city, in their main temple, right? That's where they would keep this god, like a statue of the god, and they would treat it like it was a living, breathing thing. So once a city-state fights another city-state, and then like goes up to their temple, they have the choice. They could either destroy their god, and then it's like fucking canon, like even for the people in that city, like, oh,
I guess
okay,
he's fucking
our
dead now.
god is fucking dead now. Or they like will take their god and bring it over to their city, put it underneath the statue of their god, and now it's canon that your god works for my god. Like now it's like literally written in the fucking, you know, like your church or whatever. Like, okay, so our god lost the fucking war, and now, you know, it's serving under this god, and this is the all-powerful god, blah blah blah, and that'll change, you know, if you get your fucking statue back or like whatever. I don't know.
Good luck.
It's just like it's such a weird thing. It's like a fucking capture the flag thing, but a very like, Yeah, there's
Except
stakes behind it.
Except look at 9/11.
Right. I mean that. Oh, yeah.
Destroying that. No, the explosive goal. Like, this is someone who. Oh my God. Well, Sheikh knows a lot about Bin Laden from me. Just this is the type. I'm gonna this is really quick.
Should be the other way around. If you've seen our faces.
We passed by a 9/11 thing, and I was like, I didn't do it. I was like, that's your fault. And there's another there's a video of you and some of the crew from high school. I found it a few weeks ago, and I was watching it, and it was you're yelling at I think you're yelling at Adam, and I was like, I wasn't gonna do it, but I thought about writing fucking Osama bin Laden planning getting tied at one of the hijackers for suggesting something stupid. I just had to tell you that at some point. Now I just
thank you. I'm glad it's out here. Like, everyone gets to hear it.
Because we were talking, and we'll figure out when we come back with it, but the GOAT podcast with Kane, I think you can make a great Citizen Kane-esque movie about Osama fucking Laden.
No, we're not.
That's it. We're not. That's it. That's the topic. That's it. We're moving on. I just wanted to get that out there. That's why I know a lot about this stuff. That's it. I'm just because we are tying it in with the other, because that podcast is why I went down the thoughts trail in the first place. So anything, that's your fault. I went down there.
Listen.
This is your fucking fault.
I picked up from like the hardcore history stuff when I was like looking into Persia and stuff.
Oh, I listen. That's a great podcast.
Right.
That what is it called? I forget the fucking name.
Well, I mean, speaking of Persia, play a huge role in Babylon.
We're coming up with that.
We'll get into.
But the idea of killing something's god, that's what Bin Laden did with the towers. He killed.
I mean, but it's like it's way less metaphoric than that, right?
That's literal.
Yeah,
we're literally taking your guy.
Yeah.
It's just the idea of attacking someone. But the cool part is you're right, because it is literally. It wasn't literally. We're gonna take the Christian Yahweh and we're gonna fuck him in the ass.
It would be like taking the Jesus statue from Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And then like cutting its head off or something.
Or just like putting it in Mecca and then like.
Well,
that's how
fucked up would that be? Yeah. You know. Well, and that's why it's cool.
Right.
So that's how. But and that's
this
how
was
all this
also
worked. Yeah.
Right, and this was also, at the time. It was like most people were either polytheistic or believed in their very like communal, like our location based God.
Right. Which is close to monotheism in a way. It's not exactly, but there's an idea of Marduk being the god.
I mean, dude, like the Hebrews, right? Like they were called Elamites, right? At this point, Elamites.
Yeah.
So like that shit started over there too, which gave birth to Christianity, which gave birth to Islam,
and there's so forth. There's a lot
Zoroastrianism, like all of that was like that was going on in the Persian side.
But a lot of those ideas you can trace the Mesopotamian stuff.
Yeah. Well, they like everything kind of traces back to these few cities, right?
Right.
Because humans are still at this point kind of spreading themselves out throughout the world. But like the starting point, Mesopotamia. Starting point, fucking Babylon.
Want to go down a rabbit hole? You know what I don't know a lot about is because at the same time there's stuff in India going on. I've never read anything about that.
Well, we'll have a whole different discussion.
Which would be fun because I don't know anything about that.
The three basic like starting points of human civilization, we got Mesopotamia, all that. We got the Indus Valley in India. And then we got in China, I think
China's
around the Yi River or something like that.
China's old as fuck.
So it's very... And then like you also got to remember, there was other, like not humans, but other humanoid species at the time too. Like competing with us, like we either had like not only Neanderthals, it was like 6-7 others, you know what I mean? Like all throughout the world. Like, there's so much. This all feels like a storybook, but this is shit that happened.
I forget one of the last humanoids they have, but I do think it's... Well, this is something you research right fucking now with that fucking phone of yours. But I'm pretty sure by the time the Sumerians come about, there really isn't any...
Well, yeah. I mean, like, yeah.
Well, we were talking before then?
Yeah, I was talking before then.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, by the time of Babylon and shit, just humans. Don't worry.
Wait, but hold on. Here's something cool.
Go on.
Woolly mammoths.
Woolly mammoths.
They're not that far away from the Sumerians, I don't think.
They're not. So did Egypt come before the Sumerians or before
It's actually right at the
Mesopotamia
same
or
time,
after?
yeah.
Okay, so
Look at I hope I didn't get that wrong.
No,
Like,
I know.
Woolly mammoths.
Yeah.
They don't. I
The
think
woolly mammoths, they were still around.
when they died off, though.
The first dynasty of Egypt. Wow. So that's how old Egypt is. Like, if you like to fucking Julius Caesar and shit, Egypt was how we see Egypt, pretty much.
Was how we see Julius Caesar.
Yeah, how we see Julius Caesar. That's how fucking.
And even then, you still got
old
1,000
and ancient.
years.
Yeah, and it just goes back and back. Is fucking One Piece shit, bro.
That's the fun, and that's why it's very close. Reading about this history, it's close to sci-fi fantasy works.
Right.
Like again, reading. I got it. Like I was reading. I remember this very specific day in April, again, 2018, and I was like reading about it. I woke up early, like today, because I fucking woke up at 6 o'clock for whatever reason, against my will, and I was just spent the whole morning reading about this stuff. It's like, oh my, I feel like I'm 13 again, reading Halo. Was the Halopedia.
Halo shit. It feels like fucking.
But the Covenant, the Ark, like they were using. Those are biblical terms, and the Bible comes from this. But so we talked about that. Who are the Sumerians, who are the Akkadians, before we get into proper Babylon?
So, okay.
Because I think that's important to get. So, yeah, pre-Babylonian, Sumero-Akkadian period.
So, I'm not sure about the difference between the Sumerians and the Akkadians, besides different languages.
Let's figure it out right now.
I'm trying to sort this out. But what it seems like is that with Babylon, there's no people of Babylon, right? It was different people throughout different times, but the city is what was important.
The city, that's what's weird about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, when it started out, let's see, 3rd millennium BC, we got Akkadian speakers. The Akkadians ended up becoming the Persians. So think about it like that. And I'm guessing the Sumerians are more they ended up becoming Iraq, right? That's what it seems like.
I don't know about the Akkadians turning into Persians.
The Akkadians, I am pretty certain.
I think they die out, I think?
It turns into Persia.
Okay. Just a quick fact check right over here.
Yeah, let's do a quick fact check. Fact check at the beach.
Fact check at the fucking beach.
Yeah, it's also gonna be hard to do some research right now.
Oh, because of this.
Because we are at a beach.
Then your eyes having issues.
Fuck it. For now.
Well,
fucking Akkadian turns into Persian. Take my word for it. Or it could be the Achaemenian. Either way, one takes over.
I think the Elamites turn into Persians.
The Elamites turn into
the Hebrews.
The Hebrews, which turn into Judah, which turns into
Israel. Judah and Israel.
So
Judea.
Yeah.
Judea.
We got so either the Akkadian and the Achaemenian, both it's the same geographic place.
Well, and
it
that
ends up becoming Persia.
And Sumer, so they're talking right on that article you pulled up.
Right.
The Wikipedia article. Sumerians turn. So there's this fusion of Sumerian and Akkadian. It's actually down a little bit. Keep going.
Right.
So
history.
Influence, blah blah blah. Akkadians become the dominant people. Then you got Sargon of Akkad. Right. The Akkadian Semites, Sumerians of Mesopotamia, united under one rule, under, I think... Yeah.
So it was... Okay.
The Akkadian Empire, which is basically...
The major religious center of all Mesopotamian cities were Nippur. I remember reading about this, where it was with the god of Enlil. It was the sky god. And then Babylon replaces that as the next religious center.
But how do we get there? So what's before Babylon?
So I remember reading up on this because I was reading up on Enlil. This is the sky god of Nippur, and this was
that's Sumerian. It's a Sumerian thing.
So this is this big religious center, like it was said, and like Enno was kind of, you can think of him as kind of Zeus, right? Where he was like the head god of all these
It's very
other gods.
Zeusy. Yeah.
Right.
Marduk was too eventually.
I mean, like, that's the thing. Hammurabi comes in and takes over.
Well, we got to get there first, because who's before Hammurabi? It's Sargon of Akkad's probably.
Yeah, it starts off with Sargon of Akkad.
I mean, I guess just to be really brief, Babylon is kind. You know what it's like? Here's a funny metaphor. It's kind of like saying Indianapolis is really important. It's like not really. It's a city, but it's.
It would be more like.
Or what do you think the
let's
comparison would be?
say. I'm thinking of like a huge, important like trade city.
Well, because it was a trade.
Yeah, where like just shit goes in and out of.
Yeah.
But what would that be today? Like a huge trade city.
New York. Well, it's not huge though.
Like New York. But like it didn't flip hands as much.
Right.
So like, I don't know. Whatever. Fuck the comparisons.
But the point is, it's not the center of civilization. It's not Rome. It didn't start off being Rome.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't start off being. It starts off being a city-state, like every other city-state, right?
That's under the Akkadians.
It not really under the Akkadians. They speak Akkadian. So like the people like are very like of the Akkadian culture.
Right.
It could be that those are just descendants from Akkadians that traveled out there or whatever. But yeah, I guess like becomes a dynasty with Hammurabi, right? Hammurabi was the first major king. We know him through the history books. He's the eye for an eye guy. Kind of like the first time law was written, that at least that we have evidence of.
Well, he's interesting to me. I was saying because he's basically, if you buy into the great man theory of history, which might be wrong, he's he's the second great man of history, because Sargon of Akkad is probably the first.
Really?
That's why I want to talk about Sargon before.
I don't know much about him.
Let's see.
Feel free to look.
Let's go. So,
because I really think that's pre-Babylonian.
Oh, it is. But the thing, you don't get to Hammurabi without the.
Sargon.
Yeah. So Akkad disintegrates. Civil War, blah blah blah. Sumer rises up again. There's this thing called the Third Dynasty of Ur, which I would look into.
Ur,
thank you.
Ur is another ancient. We don't know anything about it, but we have evidence of the city. We found the city.
It's basically what we just saw. It's just a bunch of people conquering each other.
I mean, but think about it like this. It's just like this whole like, it all started off like wars against these cities that we don't even know anything about except like the layout of the buildings that were destroyed later on, And these are like, Ur was, I think, one of the first cities in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything else on Sargon?
Well, we're building to what's called the Amorite dynasty, which is basically the Amorites. Who are they? They are a foreign Northwest Semitic-speaking people, began to migrate into southern Mesopotamia from northern Levant, gaining control over most of southern Mesopotamia, where they formed a series of small kingdoms.
People of the Levant. That's like Lebanon and shit now, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
States of the south were able to assimilate, blah, blah, blah. Another just group of people until they take over, and one of these Amorite dynasties found the small kingdom of Kazulu.
I mean, like, the thing is, it's gonna be like history. There's no starting point, right? So there's gonna be tons and tons of shit. We're gonna fucking.
But I just don't want to jump just to Hammurabi, just so there's some context for who he is, because he's coming. Yeah, well, here's why. Because Hammurabi, he's not the first Babylonian king. Right. He's the sixth Amorite ruler. And so now, let me just see if there's anything else we missed. So an Amorite chieftain named Sumu Abum appropriated this tract of land, which included the then relatively small city of Babylon, from another Amorite city. But this guy never goes by the king of Babylon, so it's still a minor. It's like Indianapolis, basically.
Right. It's like just a city within this other kingdom.
And then you do get, finally, a man named Sin Mubalite, who becomes the first king of Babylon, who's officially regarded as the king of Babylon. And then the Emilites conquer some stuff, and the Syria conquer some stuff.
Yeah. So,
and now we reach Hammurabi.
Okay. I mean, Bo, what did you learn from that?
Because when I hear Hammurabi, I think, oh, this dude just shows up and is awesome.
I mean, I'm assuming he didn't, start a rebellion, take the kingdom, blah, blah, blah.
I would assume it's Philip II and Alexander the Great.
Even then, Alexander the Great was the son of another ruler. Julius Caesar was
Napoleon?
The son. Napoleon, he was all right, sure.
Hitler?
But that was after the
Genghis
French
Khan.
Genghis Khan, he deserves
Attila
his
the
fucking
Hun.
props. All right.
That's why.
Homie, shut the fuck up. I'm gonna go through. Fuck you. I'm gonna go through every single one of them. All right. Genghis Khan was a fucking chieftain of the fucking Mongols. All right. That's one. Attila the Hun, same thing with him. Julius Caesar was a fucking general
Kind of a chieftain.
Warlord coming in from a fucking noble family. Who else did you name?
LeBron James.
All right.
The king.
God damn. Napoleon came after the fucking French Revolution. So the French Revolution was the big thing that changed beforehand.
I had no idea. I don't know if you told me an hour ago what's an Amorite, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? An Amorite?
Well, I mean, I didn't know much about the Amorites either. I just assumed all right, this is another noble that kind of changed things up. All right.
But now we get to Hammurabi, and he's an Amorite.
Yeah, we get to Hammurabi.
And what does he do?
He's known specifically for what we have left of it, right? So we have Hammurabi's code, which is not only we found the actual codes, but it's also written in the Bibles and stuff like that. So it's referenced as well, you know? Then he's also the one who spread Babylon in terms of building shit, in terms of architecture and stuff. Beforehand, the Assyrians, everyone they wanted everyone to know of Assyria through their might and through their conquering and shit like that, right? And now I'm kind of skipping the gun because I'm talking about Nebuchadnezzar. But Nebuchadnezzar wanted to
Nebuchadnezzar or
Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know
Nebuchadnezzar.
How to yeah.
I know that because Matrix.
But when his whole thing was he wanted to make Babylon known through its great works and its buildings and shit like that. So you see this kind of culture from the beginning of Babylon, the idea to build, the idea of this is how we show our greatness.
Right. Well, because Babylon, it has two meanings in today's I guess, when smart people invoke Babylon, they mean one of two things. Either one that's the guy who did La La Land and Whiplash, his next movie is called Babylon, which is about 1920s Hollywood. So that's evoking oh wow, it's this great city. You know, it's the second movie he's going to make about L.A., but that's besides I think it's set in L.A. Well, anyway, it's meant to evoke either a great cosmopolitan city, you could call New York a Babylon.
Yeah.
Or it could mean an evil, morally lax city. Right. That's the other.
And that definition comes from, again, one of the main enemies of Babylon. And again, these people were all fighting each other from the beginning of time. But the Elamites, right? Who later went on to kind of write the Bible, to kind of write the fucking Quran, their legacy, you know what I mean? I forgot what, the Torah, right?
The Torah, yeah.
But they were their enemies. So from their perspective, you're not gonna get a real view of this real historical place, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they burned down the first temple, so they just destroyed it. So you're not gonna be happy about that in your holy day.
Yeah, but here's the thing: when the Assyrians were destroying their temple, who did they team up with? It was the Babylonians to take
Right.
down us. But again, we're jumping.
Well, jumping ahead, but okay, so who's Hammer?
These
So
politics is gonna switch back and forth. Everyone wants dominance of this Mediterranean region.
so what's Hammurabi's legacy before we move on to? Because he is literally does occupy a massive part of that story.
Yeah. Well, again,
He kind of is Babylon in some sense.
for a long. I mean, he was Babylon until
Nebuchadnezzar, and even then, I'd still say Hammurabi kind of he defines that civilization more than even Julius Caesar, Cyrus the Great does. I'd say.
Interesting. I mean, like
That's
for
what I
sure,
got from
like,
the research I did do today, where it's like, wow,
you
we really
know the name Hammurabi more, but I would argue Nebuchadnezzar and the Neo-Babylonian revival is
That's
like
the
how
one, yeah.
we like
That is how
know
you
about
yes.
it today more.
right.
But anyway, like so he took over a lot of land from the Elamites. At his time, he disciplined his armies, and then like conquered more and more parts of Iran as well. So now you got the Iran. Iran was what?
It's Persia, right?
It was Persia, but it wasn't Persia at this time. This was before Persia. But this was like the predecessor to Persia.
We'd Google it, but we got like one bar of service stuff here.
So okay. So from what my understanding so far is like the Elamites became kind of Israel, Palestine, that area.
I thought that was the Canaanites becomes the Israelites.
I'm not sure actually, because
click on the Elamites. Well,
like no, the Elamites for sure is the Jerusalem region, like that area, Jerusalem and Palestine.
Oh, you know what? Let me. Well, I don't want to.
I'm not sure about.
I don't want to kill my battery.
Because from my understanding, it was like the Akkadians before Persia, and the Achaemenians or whatever before after the Akkadians. Nonetheless, let's see, what else was Hammurabi known for?
Before we move on to
like,
the stuff between Hammurabi and Nebuchadnezzar.
He made okay. So yeah, like I said, before Babylon became like the major religious city of this area, it was this place called Nippur, right, which is in present-day Iran, and they had this god Enlil. And like I said, the way the gods worked, the Babylonians came in and installed their god Marduk, and he kind of took over the role that Enlil had in that area as kind of like the supreme leader of all the other gods. But if you like, and like also how like this kind of like takeover works is like a lot of the stories and myths attributed to Enlil now become attributed to Marduk instead, you know?
I'm going to literally do a fact check right now of that emo Persian stuff.
Yeah.
Do you keep going about. So,
right, so yeah.
Anything else about?
Now Babylon is like the holy city, right? Hammurabi, like
it's
now,
it's Mesopotamia for all intents and purposes, right?
Yeah, and it's like picking up now because now we're talking about more like empires, right? Like more and more land is being gained, and you're gonna have to like have like a bureaucracy, right? You're gonna have to have like a systematic way of like running the city, and this is like kind of like the first like times like you see it like this, right? Where like the top down approach is like breaking down, you know, so like systematically. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but
I think you
like,
are.
This is like when it like starts coming in, you know what I mean? And then like yeah, after Hammurabi, it seems like it starts going on to a decline, right?
Well, that's a loud fucking plane.
Yeah, we'll let it pass.
Yeah, because, alright, so unfortunately we are stuck to, because my thing won't load, the Persian thing. So we are kind of...
I'll make corrections in the description.
Oh my god, I got it. Here we go, okay. But no, I'd be smart, just in case. Persians. Ancient... they're no one. Ancient Iranian people. They are...
I mean, I know they traveled in, like, Persia. But I'm saying, like, what we know as Persia today, the people of that area, what were they called?
They don't give it... I think they're called...
I'm thinking it's the Akkadians or the Achaemenians.
Yeah, history. So...
That's
for Persia's first tested, and I'm also trying to handle beach day shit now, because my phone is on. But keep
too much stress about this goddamn beach.
So Hammurabi, what happened to Hammurabi? He dies,
you know, his grandsons and shit take over, and then, you know, it starts to go on this decline, right? Babylon is, like, sacked a bunch of times. It's sacked by... I know by the end of it, it's sacked by the Assyrians, Assur. And I'm just trying to see if there's, like, shit that happened before the Assyrians took over. Yeah, they got taken over by the Kassiites.
Yeah.
Right,
That.
Right.
Let's see. Let's go back to let's see where we are, just to head back in the game, because Persia, the Nemesis region. Yeah, this is its own fucking podcast, dude. Because I'm not getting a straight answer.
Persia for sure is going to be its own podcast.
Yeah, I can't get a straight answer.
Well, look at the.
So back to Babylonia. So the who? Achaemenians. See, all these fucking people.
Yeah,
I swear to God.
Like, it's just like, you know, if you brought someone from Persia to today, do you think they're gonna give a fuck about what the fucking United States is and shit? They're gonna be like,
what the fuck's Texas?
Yeah, exactly.
So the Kassites. See, yeah, they don't even know the ethnic affiliation of the Kassites is unclear.
But, I mean, that's the thing. This is
they don't
so
even know.
long ago
they don't
that
even know.
Their history isn't recorded like this. You know what I mean? It disappears throughout time.
Well, point is, I could sum up in a sentence. They're relatively weak. That's what Wikipedia says. That they are relatively weak from 1500 to like 1100. Sealand Dynasty. Yeah, they're not doing much, man.
That's what I'm saying. Until the Assyrians take over.
Right.
And they kind of become like the villain of the region.
The Assyrians are brutal.
So, like, yeah, the Assyrians, like I said, the Elamites, the fucking pre-Persians, they're all fighting each other. Yeah. That's just regular shit. But now you got the Assyrians coming in, and they're, like, fucking ruthless, right? More ruthless than, like, regular fucking Bronze Age ruthless, which is saying some shit, right?
Yeah.
So they're like the ones known for fucking... Now, when they sack your city, they'll also fucking salt the fields so nothing grows for hundreds of years. All shit like that. And again, maybe, like, we're only getting this from our perspective of Assyrians because we got the information from the people
History's written by the victors, right?
Fought and, like, conquered them. So yeah, again, like, maybe they're not as bad as we thought, but from
our
what
evidence,
we know, the Assyrians are a lot more brutal than a lot of the other places.
There is an issue here. It's podcast related. It was a fucking pizza. There is 1,000 years of history between Nebuchadnezzar II and Hammurabi.
Which is...
We're skipping over a lot of stuff. Do we want to do that for the sake of the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, we're not going to talk about not interesting shit, right? So there's a lot of shit that happened in between. But again, it's just transfer of powers between different
because this isn't Babylonia.
Yeah.
It kind of is, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah, other kingdoms that are, like, very kind of, like, mid-level kingdoms, if I would say so, take over, blah, blah, blah.
These Syrians are important. I'm glad you mentioned it. That's the most significant one.
Exactly, because they leave their mark. And they not only, like, through their brutality, but like through their culture, like religion, like all that shit comes into play.
Yeah, because basically, to sum up in a sense, from what my understanding is, there's a reason Dan Carlin's podcast is like 12 hours long.
Yeah.
But to sum up, the Babylonians were either being conquered or were fighting being conquered.
Right.
They were never conquerors in this period. They don't become conquerors again until Nebuchadnezzar II.
Which is now coming up. So Assyria is like the new people that have control of Babylon.
Just for context, we're in the year 911 to 619 BC.
619 BC.
So
right. And
it
then,
is in the Neo-Assyrian Empire too, by the way.
Yeah.
This is how old this goes, because there was an old Assyrian Empire.
Yeah. We're not even talking about the old Assyrian. That's how well,
that's why we're doing a podcast.
There was
about
a whole
this,
fucking empire. That empire died out. And then people are like, yo, let's go back to the old days. Made a new empire, and we think of that empire as fucking
like that's the Assyria. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Assyrians,
yeah. So okay, so
but and there's still Babylonia is still conquered at this time.
Yeah, at this time it's conquered by Assyria.
It's by these. It's a long period of conquered.
Huge long period of and like you could see this again in like when we talk about like the kingdom of Judah, right? Like long periods of like being conquered.
Well, by the Babylonians.
Like everyone's doing it to everyone at this point is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, the ancient wall and this.
And there's like gonna be like it's like a slow thing because it's happening like in
it's millennia.
Yeah,
it's millennia.
But it's also like rapid for like the time being because it's just jumping from these little families here and there, these little cities taking over other cities, blah blah blah.
I would say it's like Game of Thrones, but there's something very alien about this too.
I mean, this is like it doesn't feel like Game of Thrones because this is like
why?
Because they're not
ancient.
They're not fighting with horse. They're not fighting with. Maybe they are fighting with horses. I'm not sure, but they're not fighting with like knights in armor and shit.
And they're fighting with different things.
Spears and like slingshots and shit. You know what I mean?
Feels a lot trippier. Like the idea of a god. I'm gonna kill your god. Like your literal god.
Are like. You have to row it. That's the only way. You know what I mean? Like, that's naval power.
Again, it reminds me of sci-fi. That's how far out this stuff is. Open it up again. We're skipping a lot of stuff. But
Assyria is this, like...
They rule for a while.
They rule Babylon, and they kind of rule with an iron fist is kind of the perception given off from history.
Babylon's destroyed, and
it's destroyed over and over again. Again, these cities are going to be destroyed and remade thousands of times. Think of Baghdad today, like how many times that city been destroyed and remade, and like currently being destroyed at the moment. You know.
Well, I just wanted to say the person who breaks the rule of conquest and destruction is Cyrus.
For a while until we get to the Persians being the conquerors. But Alexander.
For him to break that rule of like, we're not going to kill everyone.
Well, that's only because we'll kill you if anyone else tries to. You know
right, but there was something, and this is the Persian thing, but from my impression, Cyrus was, the reason why he was called Cyrus the Great was he breaks that thing of like, I'm not going to be a brutal conqueror, evil fuck.
But again, how much of that is perception? Because
this happened how many years ago? What is this?
And it's also like, they're nice to us because, enemy of my enemy.
The Bible loves the Bible loves Persia.
Yeah, because again, enemy of my enemy.
So I open up again because we gotta pick up. We gotta get to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, so now
Babylonian revolts.
The Babylonian revolt happens. Basically, there's this like little like governing family, I think, in Babylon at the time.
Well, it's the puppet kings, I think. Right. That's what they're called here.
Okay, so that makes sense. The puppet kings, and I think it was the Nebuchadnezzar's father who
Nebuchadnezzar. That's somewhat that's coming up. Let's see here. Well, then there's Nabopolassar. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, like the names are also going to be like Erickson. And
Yeah.
then, you know, Eric, son of
The
Eric,
Millionites.
blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Declared. Oh, well, an Assyrian declares Babylon to be the capital of his empire. He stages a revolt
Right.
against his brother.
Also, when
Yeah.
Assyria takes over, they replace Marduk with their...
Who is their god?
I think it's Ishur, but I'm not sure.
I think it is
Don't quote
Ishur.
me on that.
Yeah, this could be like, again, there's a reason Dan Carlin's are 12 hours fucking long.
Right. So,
But we're going to skip ahead to,
Nebuchadnezzar-
I'm just trying to find a place to skip ahead to him.
I would say, yeah, he starts the revolt, right?
Well, this is,
He takes over he takes over all of Assyria.
this is
pretty
Nebuchadnezzar?
much. Yeah. So
Oh,
what he
wait.
does is he teams up with the Elamites. He teams up
Well,
with
this is actually
the
Nabopolassar.
old- Whatever, Hody.
Yeah, Nabopolassar.
He-
Nabopolassar.
Teams up with the Elamites. He teams up with, I think, the Sumerian enemies of Assyria.
This is Nebuchadnezzar's dad, by the way.
Right. So they team up. They take down Assyria. I think at this point, as they're like conquering, it goes further than just Assyria. So now, like, not only did like they get back their fucking city-state, but now the territory is like spreading, right? This is like,
And it spreads under Nebuchadnezzar,
yeah,
is the
it
implication.
spreads under him. He is also like the hanging walls of Babylon, that was under him.
Yeah.
This is an ancient wonder of the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said before, their whole thing was, even though like genetically I would say, I don't think they're the same people as the old Babylon that was there 1,000 years ago.
Which is wild.
But they want to bring back the
Yeah.
culture of
Make Babylon
the old
great again.
Babylon. Yeah, not like in terms of like the
Yeah.
buildings they make.
Uh-huh.
Like that's how they want to spread the glory of Babylon, pretty much, right? Like they're doing conquest too, of course. Like don't like count that out. And like they're doing fucked up whatever fucking Bronze Age shit they do at that time. But this was all going on. And I would say this is like the height of Babylon, right?
Yeah, keep going. We just gotta
With-
text another friend back.
Like
but
this is when they have like the walled city. This is when it becomes like, it moves on from not just being an important city for religion in the area, it becomes a major like pinpoint of the Sumer region, of the Mesopotamian region, even spreading all the way down to Egypt and shit. Like pretty
Right.
much like reaching Greece, I would say. Like the islands of Greece. That's how far like the influence of Babylon spread at that point. Not their like territory, obviously.
right. This is Nebuchadnezzar still, right? Yeah, keep let's open. Oh, sorry, you open up the phone again.
Okay. So yeah, it's followed up by his sons. He takes area from the Medes.
This is Nebuchadnezzar now, right?
This is Nebuchadnezzar too.
Because again, it's like he and Hammurabi, right? So we should probably talk a lot about fucking Nebuchadnezzar, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So okay. So all right. So now we start seeing their beef with the Israelites of Judah, the Phoenicians of Canaan, and the Arameans of the Levant. So you can think of that as like, obviously, you know, Judah is Israel now. The Phoenicians, they're more in the, where would I put them? They would be like pre-Greece, right? That kind of area. And then the Arameans of the Levant, we can think of them as like Lebanon and shit today, like that area. So they're conquering those kingdoms as well now. And now you can see like why, like, you know, the Babylonians get such a bad like view in like, because this is, I would assume, around the time the Old Testament is being written too, right? This is the time period that they're talking about. Babylon is at the height of its power. They were like, you know, teamed up with the Elamites at one point to take down Assur, but now they're the top, you know, power of the region, and they're fucking over Judea. They're fucking over the Phoenicians. They're fucking over the Arameans. This is like going into Damascus, the southern Arabian people too. And then like for a while, like they had wars with Egypt and shit. Okay, so like while this is going on, Marduk is still like the main god, it seems like. We can like cut all this part out.
What part?
Just like reading.
Well, no. What do you? I'm literally.
Let's see. Heritage. Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the role they played until it got conquered by the next great king, which was Cyrus the Great, the Achaemenid Persians, you little fucker. Don't
The Achaemenid
history.
You said Elamites.
What?
You
Elamites were the Jews.
The Jews. I wanted to fact check that
shit.
too. All right.
Yeah, that was the kingdom of Judah and shit. But yeah, Cyrus the Great, the Achaemenid Persian king. Before the Achaemenids were the Akkadians. I'm pretty sure on that too.
Right.
And yeah, I guess you could count Babylon as part of like Akkadian if you think about it, since that's the language they spoke to.
That's what's tripping me out about it. I didn't know that I didn't really deal with that until it's like they don't even have their own language. They don't develop their own language, right? They're always
again like these like it was never about like, oh, we are all of one nation that speaks our own language, has our own religion, blah blah blah. They have all that, but it's for their city, and like people come and leave their city all the time, but the identity is the geographic city. It's not the people that come in. It's not the waves of people coming in and out.
Right. So as I was trying to this is a whole story that is unfolding off air, but is that more or less, do you think we kind of got, because we're at an hour too, more or less. Is there any thoughts? So what's the end of the story of Babylon then?
Round this off, like, alright, so all this shit happened, and it ends off with the next big kind of like empire, right? Like,
which is what?
The empire games are kind of just upping. If you can like...
No, that's what it feels
right?
like.
So yeah, so like first you had just the city-states fighting each other, getting bigger and bigger based on the other city-states. Now they're controlling like regions and shit, right?
Yeah.
And like it's still like, I could say like, alright, that's kind of a country at this point. But now we're talking about empires. Once like Cyrus comes in with the Persians, right? And then when Alexander comes in with an even bigger empire than that. And then we see Genghis Khan, like that's the next dude to bring in like the fucking... Alexander, then Rome, then like Genghis Khan and shit.
Yeah, the order is... I'm pretty sure the Mongol Empire was the biggest empire it ever was.
But, you know what's another thing?
What?
Tied to all this?
Is what?
Every single one of these huge mega empires, Babylon was a city they had to go to. Babylon, or like the next, Babylon of that period, right? It became Baghdad when it was time for the Mongols. But it still comes from that region. It comes from like, that area needs to be controlled if you want an empire. That never changed even to this day when we have the U.S. over in Iraq.
That's what Frank Herbert wrote about with
our empires.
Yeah.
It's literally Ardoon, right? It's fucking Arrakis. Like, from the dawn of time, like, if you have an empire, Babylon is a fucking key that you need if you want world power.
Yeah, I mean, let me open that up because I want to see how far it goes. Because they get Cyrus the Great does end with Cyrus the Great conquering.
It
the city.
ends with Cyrus the Great conquering.
But it's still. They're also, by the way, they're also called the Chaldeans in the Neo-Babylonian time.
Okay.
Just something I wanted to bring up because that's just like what? That's just an interesting little factoid. Nebuchadnezzar. How long?
Nebuchadnezzar has like sons and shit. So his dynasty lasts.
I'm just trying to see how far he is from Cyrus. So he dies in 562, like 30 years.
30?
Not even 20.
So he didn't have his son installed? I'm sure there was like, because he wasn't the one, like, from the Wikipedia, apparently, that made the Hanging Garden. It was like one further down the line.
Who the Egyptian? Oh my, it's crediting it to someone. I think Nebuchadnezzar did it.
The first?
The Hanging Gardens. Built by Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh, okay. All right, sweet. All right.
How do I get back to your? I was in Incognito.
You're on my porn one.
Oh, great.
Thank God I closed off.
Close it all the way. Okay. I'm always in Incognito, so I'm that guy.
But yeah, I just feel like this is one of these places that's just like, oh yeah, you learn about it for 2 seconds in world history. But like its shit is still, its story is still kind of being played out today. Like if we consider like Iraq is Babylon, right? So like it's still playing out. It's still a huge, major, important role like in the world that like everyone fights for it.
Yeah, I mean I'm trying to see the last mention of Babylon on here. It's largely Persian control until the Arabs come. And then it goes under Islamization. The Assyrians are still around, by the way.
The Assyrians turned into the Syrians, I'm assuming.
No, there's a literal, it says right here.
Assyria still? That's pretty
still sick. So we're Babylon, it's located now. It's just south of present day Baghdad.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's just like that area.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's like there's something to it.
I don't know.
I think it was 30 miles away from Baghdad.
Yeah. What could it be? Well, wait, just to really tie us up, because it says, the Assyrians are, there's still an Assyrian.
I'm assuming they're spread throughout.
Yeah. Well, that's also its own. That's its own episode, but it's some work. That's its own rabbit hole. Because here's the thing, guys. Let's just see if there's anything else. Because that's really it, man. I mean, it's just a fascinating story. Well, there's 2 things I want to end on. Because we are now at the hour mark, and I did try to make this, and this is going to be the shortest, at least the rabbit hole podcast.
That was pretty good. I think we got a lot of info in.
Well, good. Because I will say this, because again, if we're talking sci-fi, especially because I wanted to bring this up because I mentioned this to Sheikh earlier. Because we mentioned it in the sci-fi podcast about the new wave sci-fi because old school sci-fi can be very trippy. Like you're talking where you set stuff on like, a world 1,000,000 years in the future. And a lot of the times they would base, not a lot, I don't know how often, but there are some stories written in that time that were based on ancient sources, I guess. And using ancient religion and history and all that fun stuff. And if I had the chance to do that, I would pick a Babylonian priest.
Yeah.
As like a main character, yeah.
This is like the weird part about history from this region. The more time goes on, like, the more we find out about them, right? Which it would seem like it should be the opposite, right? We should know less and less about them as time goes on. But, like, we're finding out more of the truth.
Wonders of archaeology,
who, like, they really are. And, like, how it differs from, like, the perspective we were painted of them. Because, all we know of them is from these religious
enemies'
texts.
story.
From, like, their enemies. And I'm not trying to paint, like, I'm not trying to say like, oh, they were wrong, or like, you know, they're
Right.
like assholes for trying to paint the Babylonians in a bad light. I think it's just like a very natural thing to paint your enemies in a bad light.
Right.
But if that's what remains over time,
Well,
that's how people will see them.
there's one of the first alt history stories in modern fiction, at least, is a story called Lest Darkness Fall, from, again, a sci-fi writer. This is before the New Wave stuff. This is like 20 years before. His name's L. Sprague Camp, I think his name is. Even George R. R. Martin mentioned him once in a blog post on his blog, which he writes when he's not writing Winston Winter, which is good because he's not writing Winston Winter, which is its own. It's not going to happen.
Just switch over to One Piece, guys.
Which
Just
over the
do
One
that.
Piece. But, and he mentions him, and Lest Darkness Fall is about, I forget what it is. It's like, oh man, now I'm blanking on it, but a time traveler travels back to Rome before the fall of the Empire, and I think it's about saving it or something like that. There's another story too that is a little bit later, I think in the 50s, about basically examining what if the Carthaginians...
They'll always try to save the Empire. They'll never try to save the Roman Republic.
I could be wrong about that, but I think that's but that's a cool, yeah, what if they try to save the Roman Republic? That's Assassin's Creed though, I think, right? They did that?
I don't know. I think it just shows you
Yeah.
who the fascists are.
Right. The who?
Nothing.
The fascists? Well, there's another one where it's a sci-fi, it's a short story where it's about, you know, I think it might be by Fritz Leiber, but could be wrong about that, about what if the Carthaginians won the Punic Wars. And you get to see how different the world would be if the Carthaginians... You know, and it's,
We could talk about like alternate history because, like, again,
yeah,
like
man,
the Carthaginians were really close to just sacking Rome, right? What did they?
well,
just
they
decide not to?
were 15 miles away, but the thing is, as cool as it is, it's like, oh, they were that close.
They would have fucked up their supply lines or some shit, right?
They would have fucked up their supply lines, and they just didn't have they had the manpower to fight hard. They did not have the manpower to win.
Oh,
It would have
'Cause they would
been-
have to siege a city pretty
They
much.
would
Right?
they would either the best thing you hope for is you win and everyone in your army dies. That's the best you could hope for, and that's called a Pyrrhic victory, which is itself a historical term of the, I think, King Pyrrhus. He beats his enemies, but everyone in his army is dead, so it doesn't even matter. So that's why they didn't sack Rome at the time. But you know, but yeah, what if things went differently in other parts of the war and they won? It's like, and again, it's rather pulpy. You're not gonna get like.
Right.
This really ties in back with our old episode about the sci-fi stuff, but you're not gonna get like the Chris Nolan version, like, oh, this must be what it really is like. It's like, no,
It's not going to be
it's
super
pulpy.
research. It's going to be very like fan fiction.
It's research. It's just not. It's not gonna be Game of Thrones, where it has that authenticity. It's more just kind of fun. I think you'll look it up on your own time. I mean, I probably might look it up in a few, but because it is an interesting story. But yeah, man, alt history is cool. And yeah, there's a version of this where it's like, well, what if Babylon never went away? You know?
I mean, it would be hard to maintain an empire for that long.
What if they did? How different would our history would be?
It would have to be
No Jesus, no
massively
Moses.
I mean, like, anything can happen. Like, there could still be a fucking monolithic religion that sprouts
Well, yeah,
out
but
in
the fun
Babylon.
is going, okay, how would that? What would happen if Babylon never went away? What if that stayed like? What if it was Roman level, like being around for that long?
And, like,
You know?
honestly, it was. We're talking thousands of years.
I'm talking
You know
like
what I
the
mean?
level of Rome
Like,
had. of
influence,
power. Yeah,
right,
influence.
But the thing is, like, you couldn't do it with
No,
that
you
tech
can't,
at
no.
that time.
You're right. No, that's a big part of it. So it couldn't be. There's more fun stuff. There is a comic book written by Jonathan Hickman who wrote Infinity, which is where parts of Infinity War comes from. And also he's just he's like Marvel's big guy, I think, right now. And one of his indie comics was called Pax Romana, where he took guys with machine guns, like I think a squad of like Marines or whatever, and they traveled back in time inadvertently to Rome.
That's the fucking daydream everyone has. Like, when I'm bored,
yeah.
that's like
Yeah.
my go-to, like, all right, Go back in time
with a machine gun.
One AK. How far can you conquer? Because you could go pretty far, bro.
Yeah, man. Holy shit. You know how far? This is how we all tie it together. So what if a Babylonian traveled to the future and killed JFK? What if... I told you we tie it in.
Oh, exactly. It's not
How are you going to tie it in?
It is.
It is
all right?
true.
Here's how we tie it in.
How do you tie it in?
Okay?
You said we were going to do that.
The ancestor of Hammurabi
Okay.
travels through the generations
Okay.
and becomes JFK. But the ancestor of the Assyrian king
Uh-huh.
becomes Marilyn Monroe, and fucking she's the one who
She's the one behind Lee Harvey Oswald. She never died.
all along.
She faked her death to kill JFK.
She killed JFK. I don't know how. I don't know where else to go.
No, there is nowhere else to go. That's the truth.
That's it.
If it's the truth,
yeah.
there's nowhere else to go. Well, now you know the truth. So on that note, thank you for tuning in. If you know, we'll be back whenever. This is probably it's summer, so this will.
Hopefully the audio isn't like.
Oh no, it's pretty good.
Garbage.
It's pretty good. Because we did a 30-minute sound check before.
Right.
I've just stopped talking, so it should be pretty good. I'm not even gonna say in case it's not, because I'm just guessing it is. I hope I didn't just jinx that right now. But this summer, Sheikh's going away to Colorado, and he's very busy, which is very good. That's kind of why I want to do this at the fucking beach, just to get out of the way.
Oh yeah. It's fun at the beach. We should do them all at the beach.
We'll do them all at the beach. We might. We'll see what's. The fun of this is you don't know what our next topic will be.
I'm not sure yet.
Well, think on it. How about that?
We'll figure it out.
Well, on that note, thank you for tuning in. Shake out. Say goodbye.
Take care.
Take care and peace.